Once all your HTML elements are converted into objects, then all those objects are arranged in a sequence. So once your HTML elements are converted into objects, all those objects are arranged in the sequence in a tree kind of structure. In a tree kind of structure. Now, who will arrange all these objects in a sequence in a tree kind of structure means again browser will do. Browser will do. And this structure we are going to call as a DOM. This structure we are going to call as a DOM. DOM tree or DOM structure. Okay. Now, based on this DOM structure only, your browser will paint your screen. Based on this DOM structure only, it will paint your screen. Paint your screen means just it will display all the content on the screen. User will be able to see the user interface. Now we can manipulate this DOM structure. Nothing but we can manipulate this DOM. This DOM can be manipulated using JavaScript. Using JavaScript. If you are able to manipulate DOM using JavaScript, then only you will be able to create something called dynamic user interface. Dynamic user interface. So this is how everything is related. Initially, we will create one HTML document. In that, we will write HTML code. That HTML document we will load inside the browser. Once your HTML document is loaded in the browser, your HTML elements are converted into objects. All those objects are arranged in this sequence in a tree kind of structure. That structure we are going to call as a DOM or DOM structure. Okay. Now, once the DOM structure is created, based on that DOM structure, your browser will paint your screen. If you want, you can manipulate that DOM. You can manipulate that DOM using the language called JavaScript. Using the language called JavaScript. And if you are able to manipulate that DOM, then it means you are able to create the dynamic user interface. So this is what happens internally whenever your HTML document is loaded in the browser. And this is what we have discussed in the last session. Okay. So in today's session, we will discuss, first we will discuss how to integrate HTML and JavaScript. Okay. We will discuss how to integrate your HTML and JavaScript. Afterwards, we will discuss how to manipulate HTML document using JavaScript. Then we will discuss how to create DOM element using JavaScript. Then we will discuss how to add DOM element inside the DOM. Inside the DOM. So we will discuss all these points. In today's session, we will try to discuss this everything. So you will get a pretty good idea how to create user interface using JavaScript. So once you know all these points, then you will come to know how to create user interface using JavaScript. How to create user interface using JavaScript. So our ultimate goal is to understand how to create user interface using JavaScript. So to understand that, we have to learn all these things. Okay. So first, let's do one thing. Let's create one HTML document. So let's suppose I am creating one simple HTML document. I hope everybody knows how to create one HTML document. Let me give the name for this HTML document as a index.html. Okay, let me give the name as a index.html. So if I go to my VS Code, so let me open my VS Code here. Open folder. Let me navigate to the path where we have created our folder. Yeah. Let me here create session 3. Okay, I have opened that folder in my VS Code. Now here simply I am creating a file index.html. Okay, now inside this index.html, let's suppose I have created a basic document. I have created a basic document. Inside this document, let's suppose I'm just taking one div. Inside that one h2. And here inside this h2, I'm just adding some content like welcome to JavaScript or welcome to HTML. Welcome to HTML. And I'm adding one button here. Something like change content. Something like change content. Now let me save it. I just created one simple HTML document. Now inside this HTML document, if you want to write JavaScript code inside your HTML file or HTML document, if you want to write JavaScript code, then we have to use something called script tag. We have to use something called script tag. Now that script tag you can use inside your header section or you can use inside your body section. Wherever you want, you can use it. Suppose I want to use my script tag inside my header section. I can use it. So simply take a script tag. Script tag. Okay. Now inside this script tag, we can write our JavaScript code. Whatever JavaScript code you want to write, you can write. For example, I can create one function. Function something called f1. Okay, something like instead of f1, I will just add fn add. Now simply here I can write the logic to add two numbers. I can create variable where x equals to 100, where y equals to 200. And simply I can just write console.log of x plus y. I can write any JavaScript code now, any JavaScript code. Whatever you have learned in the JavaScript code, everything you can write inside your script tag. So this is how we integrate our HTML and JavaScript. Nothing but inside our HTML document, we are writing our JavaScript code. Now, if you want to call this function, one way is you can just call this function here itself like this fn add. I can call this function like this fn add because we know that if you want to execute the function, we have to call it. So I'm just calling this function. Now what you can do, you can simply load this document inside your browser. Okay, now once you loaded this document inside your browser, already this function got executed because already you called this function got executed. Now, if you want to see this result, console.log result, if you want to see that inside your browser, if you want to see that console.log result, then what you have to do, just right click, click on this inspect, click on this option called inspect. Once you click on this inspect, your developer tool will open. Okay, here you have lot of tab like welcome, element, console. There is a tab called console. Click on that console. Now see, here you are able to see that result 300. We got the result 300. Because here we have added 100 plus 200, the result is 300. So that result you are able to see. You are able to see in the console. Now this is called console area in your browser. Inside this console area, we can write any kind of JavaScript code. We can write JavaScript code. Here I can just add two numbers. I can say 100 plus 50. I will get here result. I can create variable here where x equals to some name. I can click on enter. If I just say x, it will print that result. Okay, now this is called console. So inside your HTML document, if you write any console.log and if you want to see that result, then that result you can see inside this console area. Okay, now my requirement is I don't want to call this function like this. Directly, I don't want to call this function. I want to call this function whenever I click on this button. So here I have one button, right? If I click on this button, I want to call that JavaScript function. So how to call that JavaScript function whenever you click on this button? So for that, we have to add one attribute to this button. We have to add one attribute to this button, and the name of that attribute is on click. The key name is on click. And to this attribute, we have to pass our function call as a value. We have to pass our function call as a value. So if you want to call any function on button click, what we will do, we will simply add one attribute. Technically, it is called event listener. It is called event handler. So in coming sessions, I will explain you about the events, maybe in the next week. Okay. In that case, I will explain you exactly what is this. So as of now, you just try to understand it is an attribute, one of the attribute of your button. The key is on click and value should be your function call. Now, no need to call this function like this explicitly. Now, in this case, what happens? Whenever you click on this button, this function will be called. Whenever you click on this button, this function will be called. So if I go back here, okay, now let me refresh. Now see, there is nothing in the console. Nothing is printing in the console. Now, if I click on this button, my function will be called. Now see, I got 300. If I click one more time, that function will be called. See, here we got 2 times. One more time, 3 times. You can click any time. The number of times you will click on this button, that many number of times your function will be called. Your function will be called. Okay. So this is your JavaScript function. This is your HTML code. So this is how we are integrating HTML and JavaScript. So in much more detail about this, we will learn in the 5:30 batch. So in 5:30 already we are learning JavaScript, right? So there in depth, we will learn about all this. So at this stage, you have to just remember this much. Is it clear for everyone? Anyone have any doubts or any confusion till here? Here I have just shown you how to write HTML JavaScript code in HTML. How to call JavaScript function on button call. This is what I tried to explain. How to write JavaScript code inside HTML file, or you can say document. How to call JavaScript function on button click. On button click. This is what we have tried to understand. Okay. Now, can you access this HTML elements? Can we access this HTML elements in JavaScript? Can we access HTML elements in the JavaScript so that we can manipulate those HTML elements? So my question is, can we access HTML elements in the JavaScript so that I can manipulate HTML element? I can manipulate HTML element. Can we access HTML element in the JavaScript so that I can manipulate HTML element? Answer is yes. Yes. Okay. So how to access your HTML element in the JavaScript. That is the first thing we will try to understand. Then we will try to understand how we can manipulate it. Okay, so let's divide this task into two parts. First, let's learn how to access HTML element in the JavaScript. So to access your HTML elements in the JavaScript, our browser is providing us some predefined objects and predefined functions. To access HTML elements in JavaScript, our browser is providing us some predefined objects and predefined functions. Using these predefined objects and functions, we can access any HTML element inside our JavaScript. Using these predefined objects and functions, we can access any HTML elements in the JavaScript. And once you are able to access, then you can manipulate those HTML elements. Manipulation means you can change the content of that HTML element. You can change the style of that HTML element. You can remove that HTML element. Okay, if you want, you can add another element before or after that HTML element, or as a child to that HTML element. You can do so many things. All these things we call as a manipulation. So first, let's see how to access HTML element in the JavaScript. So for that, there are some predefined objects, and one of the predefined object is document. So what is document? Document is a predefined object, and this object represents your entire HTML file. And this is the predefined object. Okay, let's see this predefined object. So what I will do, simply here I will create something called document.html. Now here I'm just creating one HTML document. Okay, let's suppose here I'm just creating some div, inside that one h2. I'm saying here document object. Maybe I have one paragraph, something called lorem 50. I can have one button. Okay, something like show document object. Some buttons like show document object. Okay, now inside this HTML document, I want to write some JavaScript. So I am using script tag. I have used script tag. Inside this script tag, I'm creating one function show document object. Some name I am giving to my function, show document object. Now my requirement is, whenever I click on this button, I want to call this function. So what we will do for this button, simply we will add one attribute called onClick. And to that attribute, we will pass this function call, show document object. Now inside this function, I need to write the logic to print one document object. But as of now, I have said document is a predefined object. So can we access that object directly? So here I am doing console.log of document. Simply I am doing console.log of a document. Let's see in the console what it will print. If I do console.log of document object. So if I load this document in my browser, now if I just open that inspect, I will go to that console tab. Okay, I will create this. I don't have anything here now. Now if I click on this button, now see one document object is printed. And if I keep my cursor on that document, now see how my browser is, this entire part is highlighted. So this document object represents this entire thing. Now, if I expand it, now you will see all the code that we have written. You will see that entire code that we have written. So this is what we have written. So document is a predefined object in JavaScript which represents our HTML document. So what is document? If someone asks you what is document in JavaScript, it is an object. You have to say it is an object. So document is a predefined object which represents the HTML document, which represents HTML document. Okay, internally, actually, technically, it is one object. So that object is not printed in the console because browser has restricted, but document is actually one object. One object means it should be something like this, where document equals to one object. Now, what your object contains? Normally, what object contains? Object contains lot of properties, right? Lot of properties. And for every property, there will be some key, there will be some value. Okay, value can be of any type. For some properties, value will be number type. For some properties, value will be string type. For some properties, value will be something else. So there are so many properties in this document. There are so many properties. Okay, if you want to find out how many properties we have, I will show that as well. But remember, as of now, there is one property inside this document that is called get element by ID. There is one property in this document object with the key called get element by ID. And the value of this property is one function. And it is a predefined function. Some code has been written inside this function. Now, this function will take one parameter. It will take one parameter. Now, who created this document object? Your browser created. Who added all this property inside your document object? Your browser added. Who created this function? Your browser created this function. Now, we just need to know what is the purpose of this function. What is the purpose of this function? Using this get element by ID function, using this function, we can get the reference of any HTML element inside our JavaScript. Using get element by ID function, we can get the reference of any HTML element in the JavaScript. We can get the reference of any HTML element in the JavaScript. Once you have the reference of any HTML element, then you can perform any operation on that HTML element. You can perform any operation on that HTML element. Operations like you can remove the content of that HTML element. You can add new content in that HTML element. You can change the style of that HTML element. You can add another element inside that HTML element. You can do so many things. If you want to perform any operation on any HTML element, you have to get the reference. So how to get the reference of any HTML element? Using this function called get element by ID. Here E should be capital. And to this function, we have to pass the ID. We have to pass the ID value as an argument. You have to pass ID value as an argument in double quotes, or you can pass in single quotes as well. And whatever reference you will get of any HTML element, that reference will be also in the object type. So references of your HTML element are object type. It means internally HTML references are also objects only. Okay, what is the meaning of that? Let me just make you understand. Now, first, let's try to get the reference of this H2. Let's suppose I want to change the content of this H2. So I want the reference of this H2 inside my JavaScript function, inside my function. So let me just create a new file. Okay, I will say H2 reference here .html. Okay, now my requirement is very simple. So let me just change the function name to change content. Here I will change content. Yeah. Now my requirement is whenever I click on this button, the content of this H2 should change. As of now, the content is document object. Whenever I click on this button, I want to show here, welcome to JavaScript or hello JavaScript. I want to show something like that. I want to change the content of H2. Now, how to change the content of H2? For that, we have to access this H2 inside our JavaScript. How to access this H2 in our JavaScript? First, give the ID to this H2. Give some ID. So I'm just giving here ID as a title. Okay, now we have one predefined function called document. So inside that document object, there is one function called get element by ID. Just call that function. And to this function, in double quotes, you pass the ID value. So ID value is title, just pass it title. Now internally, what this function will do, it will give you the reference of this H2 element. It will return the reference of that HTML element. So if it is returning something, catch in some variable. So I am saying here H2 reference. So technically, this reference is also object type. It means technically H2 ref is also object type here. So where H2 ref, it is an object type. Now inside this H2 ref also there will be lot of properties. There are lot of properties. So there is one of the property called inner text. And by default, inside this inner text, whatever content you have added in that opening tag and closing tag, that content will be there. By default, you will find this content. This content will be added by default inside this property. Who will add? Your browser will do that. So you need not to worry. So now you have H2 reference. In that there is one property called inner text whose value is something called document object. Now I want to change this content. So I hope everybody knows how to update your property. So if you want to update your property, what we will do? Simply we will say H2 ref dot inner text equals to with whatever content you want to update. Maybe something like hello JavaScript. Hello JavaScript. Now if I come back here, now can I do the same thing here? H2 ref dot inner text equals to hello JavaScript. So now whenever I click on this button, this change content function will be called. In that function, first it will take the reference of this H2. Then whatever content you have here, that content will get changed to this content. So let's see. So let me load this document in my browser. So initially I have here document object. There is one button called change content. Now if I click on this, now see my content got changed. My content got changed to hello JavaScript. Now like this, if you are able to change the content of your document dynamically, like this, if you are able to change the content of your document dynamically, then we are going to call this as a dynamic user interface. We can call this as a dynamic user interface. If you are not able to change anything on your page, then that is called static user interface. So static user interface we can create using HTML and CSS. Dynamic user interface we can create using HTML, CSS and JavaScript. So here I just tried to make you understand how to access the reference of any HTML element. Suppose I want to access paragraph. So what I will do, I will give the ID to this paragraph. Some ID I will give. I will use same function. Document dot get element by ID. And this time I will pass here P1. Now what this document dot get element by ID will do, it will give me the reference of paragraph. So just catch in that in some variable. So here I'm just taking pref. Now I want to change the content of my pref. So simply what I will do, pref dot inner text equals to whatever content you want to add. So here, for example, I am just adding some content here. So this is JavaScript. Just I have added this content. Now if I go back here, now if I click on this button, now see my H2 content and paragraph content got changed. So like this, you can take the reference of any HTML element. You can take the reference of any HTML element. Even you can take the reference of button also. Now here, I can give the ID for this button. Something called BTN. And simply I can access the reference of my button. How to get the reference of your button? Document dot get element by ID. And just pass your button ID. It will give you the reference of button. Catch in some variable. Okay, these are just variables. You can give whatever name you want to give. And I want to change this content. So here simply I will say btn ref dot inner text. Here I will say button content, or I will say document content got changed. Now if you go back to your browser, now see on your button the content is change content. The button name is change content. If I click on this button, now see my button name got changed to document content got changed. So like this, you can do so many things. So inside your document object also, you will have so many properties. Here I have just shown you one property. Like this, you will have lot of properties. And inside this reference also, in element reference also, you have so many properties. There are so many properties. And using all those properties, we can do some kind of operation. Okay, so all these things we learn in the JavaScript. Basically, this is the concept of JavaScript. But this concept we will utilize in React. That is the only reason I am covering this part. This concept will be used in React. That is the only reason why I am covering all this. Whatever you are learning, this will be like base to start with React. If you don't understand my first 5 sessions, then I will clearly say don't join the React batch, because if you join React batch, simply your money will get wasted because you won't understand anything in React. If you understood my first 5 sessions, then only I recommend you guys to join the batch, because I don't want to waste your money. I can say, okay, you join, you will understand everything in React. So that false things I don't want to give. So attend first 5 sessions and just check whether you understood that 5 sessions or not. If you understood, then only I will recommend you guys to join the batch, or else don't join. Because if you did not understand first 5 classes, then you will not understand entire React. I'm pretty sure if you join, you will just waste your money, and I don't want unnecessarily you waste your money. Okay, so as of now, we just tried to understand how to get the reference of HTML element using ID value. There are so many techniques. Using tag name also we can get reference. Using class name also you can get reference, right? Using parent element also you can get reference. But here I have shown you only one way how to get the reference of HTML element using ID value, because this is what the approach we will follow in React. In our JavaScript in 5:30 session, I will show all the approaches, like using class name, using tag name, how we can get the references. So how to get the reference of HTML element using ID value, and I have shown you how to change the content of HTML element. So I just wanted to know whether you guys understood these 2 points or not. If you did not understand, you guys can just unmute yourself and you can ask the question. If you have doubt or if you got confused at any part, you guys can ask. But ask the doubt based on what I have covered till now. So any doubts or any
Yes.
whatever I have covered.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. If there are two IDs are same, in that case, what will happen?
IDs cannot be same. You should not add, right? So that is the first rule you have to follow. IDs should be unique in your entire HTML document. So if you're adding same IDs, then you are not following the rules of JavaScript. Okay. So when we will learn about classes, now there will be a same class for multiple elements, right? In that case, what happens, that we will see. Suppose if you are trying to access any HTML element using tag name, then there are a lot of chances that in the same document you might have multiple tags with the multiple same elements. Then what happens in that case? So that part we will learn once we explore that, how to get the reference of your elements using class name and tag name. But when it comes to ID, remember, in your entire HTML document or your entire your project, IDs should be unique. IDs cannot be duplicate. IDs are like your roll numbers in your colleges. So in your class, whenever you are in the class, the IDs should be unique, right? There will be no two students who have same roll number or same IDs.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Okay. Now, next thing we will try to understand how to create any DOM element. Nothing but if I want to create H2. Yeah. Is my voice audible, guys? I just got disconnected.
Yes.
Okay. So now we will learn how to create any DOM element. DOM element is nothing but, for example, I want to create H2 in JavaScript. How to create H2 in JavaScript. If you create H2 in JavaScript, then instead of calling this as a HTML element, we call this as a DOM element. That's it. Okay. So how to create H2 in JavaScript? That is what we wanted to know. So to create H2 in JavaScript, there is one predefined function. There is one predefined function called create element. The predefined function is create element. And this function is present in your document object. It means you have to access something like this. Document dot create element. Okay. So as I have said you, document is one object. So where document is one object, in that already we know one property called get element by ID. Get element by ID is one of the property whose value is one function. Whose value is one function. In the same way, there is one more property inside this document object. and the name of that property is create element. Create element. And the value of this property is one function. Internally, it is one function. And this function will also take one parameter. Here you have to pass your tag name. Whichever element you want to create, that tag name you have to pass. Now, what this function will do? It will create one element for you, and it will return you the reference of that element. It will return you the reference of that element. It will return you the reference of that element. Okay, so let's see how it will return the reference of that element. Now, if I go back here, now here I will say something called create element .html. Creating basic HTML document. Okay, creating here one H2. I'm saying like create new H2 element. Let's suppose I have one button here. Okay, I will say create H2. Or here instead of H2, I will take H1. Okay, now here I am taking one script tag so that we can write our JavaScript code. Now I want to write the logic to create one H2 element using JavaScript. So for that, I required one function. So I'm creating one function saying like create H2 element. Okay, some dynamo like my custom function. Now this function I want to call whenever I click on this button. So on click, here create H2 element. Okay, now my requirement is very simple. Whenever this function is called, I want to create one H2 element. So how to create H2 element? Simply we have to say document dot create element. You have to call this function. Now this is predefined function. Already the logic of this function is written by your browser. You need not to worry. So you have to access this function using document object, document dot create element. Now which element you want to create? That element tag name you have to pass. So here I want to create H2. Now internally what this create element will do, it will create one H2 element and it will return you the reference of that H2 element. Now if it is returning the reference, catch in one variable. You can create whatever name you want. I'm just giving here H2 reference now. Now internally, whenever this line gets executed, one H2 element will be created like this without any content. Without any content, one empty H2 element is created. Now inside this H2 element, I want to add some content. So what I will do, simply I will say H2 reference dot inner text equals to, I will say I am new H2 element created by browser, created by JavaScript. Okay, here I will say I am new H2 element created by JavaScript. Now, whenever this line gets executed internally, like this, your H2 element will be added with this content. H2. Okay, now let's see internally what happens. Whenever I load this document in my browser, in that case, what happens? One DOM tree will be created. Okay, let's suppose this is our HTML document. Whenever this document is loaded inside your browser, if this is your browser, whenever this document will load inside our browser, one DOM tree will be created. Okay, so as per our document, how the DOM tree will be created? First, while creating the DOM tree, your browser will add one window object, which is the parent object. Under that window, document object will be added. Under that document object, all your HTML elements which are converted into objects, all those objects will be arranged. Now inside this HTML document, we wrote lot of HTML tags. First, all those HTML tags are converted into objects. Now those objects will be arranged here. So it will start with HTML. Under HTML, we have head and body. So here it will be head, here it will be body. You have head, here you have body. Now under body, how many tags we have? Under head, let's go with head. Under head, we have two meta tags. We have title tag, we have script tag. So we have totally 4 tags. So what it will do under head, it will add all those 4 tags. 2 meta tags, okay, 1 title tag, and 1 script tag. 1 script tag. It will add all those tags. Okay, here in the short, I will write something like this. This is the meta tag. Here also meta tag. Here title tag. Here script tag. And inside our body, we have H1, we have 1 button. So what it will do inside our body, it will add 1 H1 and 1 button. 1 H1 and 1 button. H1 and button. Okay. Now, according to this DOM tree, your screen will be painted. So if I just load this document in my browser, now internally all this DOM tree is also created. Browser will create in such a fast, you are not able to recognize it. So it done so many operations internally. Now, as per your DOM tree, however your DOM tree looks, according to that, your screen will be painted. So inside your body, you have only H2 and you have 1 button. So it is shown only H1 and 1 button on the screen. Now, using our JavaScript, we created 1 H2 element. Using JavaScript, we created H2 element. Now, this H2 element, if you want to show on the screen, then what you need to do, this H2 element, you have to add inside this DOM tree. Nothing but this H2 element, somewhere in the body you have to add. Now you decide where this H2 you want to add. You want to add inside the body, or you want to add inside H1, or you want to add, like if you have here div, you want to add inside div. You decide where you want to add. Let's suppose I want to add this H2. I want to add inside my body. Maybe after button I want to add. Here I want to add my H2. So where you want to add this H2? Inside the body. So if you want to add this H2 inside the body, then the first step is get the reference of this body element. First step is get the reference of body element. You have to get the reference of the element in which you want to add. So in our case, we want to add inside the body directly. So get the reference of body element. Once you have to get the reference, second, use a predefined function called append child. Use one predefined function called append child. So using append child, we can add DOM element inside the DOM. And once your DOM get modified, your browser will come to know that DOM got modified. Again, it will repaint your screen. Repaint your screen means your screen will get modified. So first, get the reference of body element. So how to get the reference of body element? For that, I am adding one ID to this body with the value called body only. So my ID name is body only. So I will get the reference of my body using document.getElementById. I got the reference. Here I will say var body reference. Now, inside this body reference, there is one predefined function called append child. Okay, now append child is a property which is present inside this body reference and whose value is one function. So we are calling like a function. So to this append child, you pass your DOM element. So this H2 reference is our DOM element. Just pass it. That's it. Now, if I go back here, now see, if I click on this button, now see, one H2 element is created. Now I am new H2 element created by JavaScript. Now let me just show you. If I just refresh it, I don't have anything. If I right click, go to the inspect. Here there is one element tab. Okay, in this element tab, you will see all the code that you have written. Now see, inside this body, you have H1, you have button. After that, you don't have anything. This script is added by browser. Okay, forget about this. But after button, we don't have any HTML tag here. Now, if I click on this button, now see, one H2 element got added. Now one H2 element got added. So how this H2 element is added? Basically, we are adding that H2 element inside this DOM tree. Inside this DOM tree. So manually, we are writing the code. We are writing the code to add it. So like this, you can create any number of elements. I can create one paragraph also. If I want, I can create one paragraph also. How to create one paragraph element? So simply we have to say document dot create element. Which element you want to create? I want to create paragraph element. It will give you the reference of paragraph. Now inside that paragraph, just add some content. So pref dot inner text equals to, I'm just adding, I am a new paragraph. Now this paragraph also I want to add inside the body. I want to add after H2. So simply again, I will say here body reference dot append child. Where I want to append, what I want to append, paragraph. So I'm saying that inside my body element, add this element as a child. Now, if I go back here, if I click on this, I got H2 element, I got paragraph. Like this, I can create any HTML element. Whatever HTML elements you have, right? You can create anything. You can create image, you can create table, you can create list, you can create one form, like you can create text box, radio button, checkbox. You can create one button also. You can do anything with JavaScript. So this is what we say, creating the user interface using JavaScript. Now these two elements are created using HTML. These two elements are created using JavaScript. First two elements are created using HTML. Second two elements are created using JavaScript. Now just see, to create one H2 and paragraph, this much code we have to write. Just to create one H2 and paragraph, this much code we have to write. In the previous file, we created same H2 and paragraph. Now see, in your HTML, how easy it is to create H2 and paragraph. And how complex you will find to create same H2 and paragraph in JavaScript. So in HTML, you have to just write 2 lines. In your JavaScript, you have to write nearly 6 to 7 lines, 6 to 7 lines of code, just to create one H2 and paragraph. This is the reason in last session I have told you, creating user interface with HTML is very easy. Creating user interface with JavaScript is little complex. But using JavaScript, we can reuse the same user interface. Suppose I want to create one more time. H2 and paragraph. I will click on this button. See, one more H2 paragraph created. Now, are we writing the code to create two H2, 2 paragraph? No, we are writing the code only for one time to create one H2 and one paragraph. But we are able to create multiple times. This is called reusability. But same thing, if you want to do in HTML, then what you have to do? You have to copy paste. These 2 lines of code, you have to copy paste multiple times. It means you have to rewrite the code. You have to rewrite the same code multiple times. So that is the reason we say that in HTML, we cannot reuse the code. But creating UI is simple. In JavaScript, we can reuse the code, but creating user interface itself is very complex. Now, what React says, with me, you can reuse the code, and creating user interface is also very simple, like your HTML. Like your HTML, it is very simple to create user interface in React. And once you create user interface, you can reuse it also, like JavaScript. Now, this is the only reason why people want to use React. Like one of the reason, I can say one of the reason why people want to use React to create user interface instead of HTML and JavaScript. So all these concepts, whatever I have taught, just to make you understand why React is used to create user interface. Why React is preferred or used, or I can say why React is preferred to create user interface over HTML and JavaScript. So in first session, we learned what is React, what is the purpose of React. Now we are trying to, we just understood why React is preferred. So the points are, it is easy to create UI, the first point. Second, we can reuse the user interface. We can reuse the user interface. Okay, so I hope you guys got the input, like why React is used, why industry using React. Yeah, for that we have a lot of functions, Chandrasekhar. You have a lot of functions. Just you have to use those functions. You have to find out exact what function we need to use to add before that button or in between button and H2. You have to use that thing. Okay, so here we are not learning entire DOM in the detail. Here I am just making you understand. Now this knowledge will be like input to understand React. This whatever I have covered till now, all this knowledge will be like input to understand React. Okay, yeah, so that's all guys for today's session. So in tomorrow's session, we will explore some more concepts of JavaScript. Okay, so there is one important concept we have to understand before we enter into React, that is module pattern. Module pattern in JavaScript. Okay, apart from that, we have to know some more like spread operator, what is like destructuring, right? How to create arrow functions. Okay, what is the difference between arrow function and normal function? Okay, this is what are the few things what we have to understand before we jump into React. And there are concepts like promises and fetch. Promises I will teach you once we encounter that topic in React. So before we encounter that topic in React, I will take one session on the promise. I will explain that promises. Okay. In the same way, I will explain you something called fetch, like how to do network calls. So that also we are going to encounter in React. So before we encounter that topic, I will teach that as well. So in that way, we will learn few part of JavaScript while understanding the React, so that we will not waste our time in JavaScript. Again, it will be like boring, right? So let's start with React. Maybe in the day after tomorrow session. Tomorrow session, I required again to make you guys understand few things about the JavaScript. Yeah. So remaining things we will explore in tomorrow session, guys.
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
Here we are going to learn any material design, sir. Material UA.
No, I will explain you about Chakra UI. I will take one session or two sessions on Chakra UI and I will explain. And I will be using Bootstrap in our React sessions.
Sir, Redux means like Redux toolkit we are using, sir.
We will learn both. First, we will learn the core concept of Redux. Then we will learn toolkit.
Okay.